Okay, well, hello, we are going to start. Para los que deseen escuchar este webinar en español, les pido que por favor elijan debajo en la ventana de Zoom el icono del mundo y allí pueden elegir el canal en español. Allí va a haber una interpretación simultánea. Good day, welcome to the webinar of Nature-Based Solutions organized by Fundación Torcuato y Tella, Delta Alliance Argentinian Wing, Delft University of Technology, and the International Forum on Urbanism, with the support of the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Buenos Aires. We also count with the participation of the Central Society of Architects and the Professional Council of Architecture and Urbanism. I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Verónica Stagare. I'm Master in Urban Economics by Tella University and Doctor by Delft University of Technology. I coordinate the Argentinian wing of Delta Alliance within the scope of Fundación Torcuato y Tella, and I'm guest researcher at Delft University of Technology. Okay, we will start this webinar with a brief institutional opening, which will be given by the organizers. First, I'm going to introduce to Hernán Carlino, who is going to talk on behalf of Fundación Torcuato y Tella, which is the coordination agency of Delta Alliance Argentinian Wing. He's economist, member of the board of directors of the Fundación Torcuato y Tella, director of the Centers for Studies on Global Climate Change of the Fundación, and member of the Argentine Academy of Environmental Sciences. Hernán, please, if you are there.
Buenos días a todos. Quiero confirmar que el audio está operando bien.
Sí.
Okay. Gracias, Verónica. Nuevamente, buenos días a todos. En nombre de la Fundación Torcuato y Tella, quiero agradecer a todos los investigadores y a todos los centros de investigación y universidades e instituciones que han trabajado para la organización de esta serie de webinarios. En principio, esta es una tarea valiosa per se porque permite ejercitar los procesos de coordinación y de cooperación entre instituciones de investigación que están ubicadas en diversas regiones del mundo. Quiero agradecer también a las instituciones que han apoyado esta organización de distintas maneras. Verónica ya las ha mencionado, pero quiero reiterar nuestro agradecimiento a la Embajada del Reino de los Países Bajos en la Argentina, en Buenos Aires específicamente, a la Delta Alliance y también a la Universidad Tecnológica de Delft, con la cual hemos trabajado ya el año pasado en un seminario internacional, de modo que esta serie de webinarios es un proceso de profundización de la cooperación y de enfoque en temas que consideramos claves en esta instancia del desarrollo de los procesos de reflexión sobre el estado del mundo y el estado del planeta, ¿no? Creo que nos une la preocupación por la situación general de la naturaleza en la Tierra. Hay una crisis manifiesta que se expresa de distintas maneras en el cambio climático, en la perturbación de los ecosistemas, en la desaparición de especies y en la degradación de un número significativo de ecosistemas. Esta situación se vincula naturalmente con el modo en que la humanidad, y en particular esta cultura y esta sociedad, se relacionan con la naturaleza. Tenemos además conflictos geopolíticos importantes y además de ello la situación de pandemia que provoca efectos disruptivos adicionales sobre el funcionamiento de las economías y de las sociedades. De modo que la situación general parece delineada por un conjunto de crisis de distinto orden y de distinta naturaleza y también de distinta génesis. Creo que la consideración, la exploración de las soluciones basadas en la naturaleza puede contribuir a encontrar un camino para, en el medio de estos conflictos y problemáticas agudas, encontrar caminos de solución. En particular, pensar esto no solo en términos del largo plazo, sino también del muy corto plazo. De qué modo las soluciones basadas en la naturaleza pueden integrarse en los planes de recuperación post-pandemia o para enfrentar los efectos de la pandemia. De modo que estas reflexiones, que espero que se desarrollen en esta serie de webinars, permitan contribuir a pensar el mundo de una manera algo diferente y más equilibrada, más adecuada a la gobernanza de la sociedad, pero también a la gobernanza de los sistemas planetarios, cuyas fronteras están siendo traspasadas en numerosas áreas de los sistemas naturales. Esto es todo. Les agradezco nuevamente a todos por participar. Insto a que tengamos un diálogo y un debate amplio que permita analizar los problemas que enfrentamos y que permita hacerlo de una manera cooperativa. No hay soluciones globales sin diálogo, sin democracia y sin equidad. Gracias nuevamente y los dejo en compañía de Verónica, que va a seguir adelante con el webinar.
Okay, well, thank you, Hernán. I'm going to present now Mr. Roel Nieuwenkamp, who is the ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Buenos Aires.
Muchas gracias, Verónica. And good morning in Argentina and good afternoon in Europe. For me, it's a real pleasure to be part of the official opening of the series of webinars on nature-based solutions. We are supporting this, like we supported last year, the seminar on water territories. But nature-based solutions are a trendy topic as they are seen as a way to counter the effects of climate change. And for the Netherlands, this is an existential issue because a lot of our territory is below the sea level. And during the next 3 Wednesdays, you will be presented with several cases, some of them from the Netherlands, such as the Room for the River program, the Resilience by Design program of the metropolitan area of Amsterdam, or the Water as Leverage program. We are very proud of these programs. And our new reality makes it impossible to meet in person, but the good thing is that now we can reach a far wider audience virtually with this digital event. I would like to wish you all a very interesting and fruitful discussion. And now I'm happy to leave the floor to the real nature-based solutions experts. Good luck.
Okay, thank you very much, Roel, for your introduction. Now I'm going to present, on behalf of the International Forum on Urbanism, Dr. Flavio Hanches. He is Doctor in Urbanism by Delft University of Technology, Professor of Architecture and Urban Design in the University of Buenos Aires, and Scientific Board Member of the IFOU. Please, Flavio.
Gracias, Verónica. Buenos días y buenas tardes a todos. Muchas gracias por la invitación. Estamos desde el International Forum en Urbanismo muy agradecidos de la convocatoria y de la invitación para ser parte de esto. El foro, para introducirlos, es una institución internacional que comenzó en un acuerdo, una cooperación entre universidades de Delft y Tsinghua en Beijing, y hoy reúne a más de 30 instituciones de prestigio internacional, centros de investigación, etcétera, entre ellos la Universidad de Buenos Aires. La red lo que busca es generar convenios de cooperación, construir conocimiento en conjunto y generar un diálogo entre academia e instituciones de gobierno para buscar soluciones a los distintos conflictos de las metrópolis, de las ciudades y metrópolis del mundo. El tema que realmente creo que es interesante y que agradezco esta iniciativa por parte de Verónica y por el doctor Diego Sepúlveda, también de la Universidad de Delft, es la posibilidad no solo de conocer iniciativas y experiencias internacionales exitosas, sino también construir modelos de cooperación y de cotransferencia de conocimiento para poder no solo reconocer metodologías, sino también buscar formas de replicabilidad y de acción en ciudades que están con conflictos ambientales, conflictos socioterritoriales que son comparables y que son también de una aplicación posible. Por eso creo que este tipo de acontecimientos y de encuentros a nivel internacional, creo que nos puede dar la oportunidad, o es el mejor forma, el mejor modelo para poder construir esta manera de cooperar y de desarrollar conocimiento compartido. Nuevamente agradezco a los organizadores y felicitaciones por el evento, y muy ansioso por conocer todos los resultados y las experiencias que van a ser compartidas.
Okay, thank you, Flavio. And finally, on behalf of TUDelft, Delft University of Technology, is going to talk Diego Sepúlveda Carmona. He is the coordinator of the international team of the Department of Urbanism. He is also lab coordinator, senior researcher and teacher at the chair of spatial planning and strategies, and researcher at the Delta Urbanism Research Group. Yes.
Well, thank you, Veronica. Thank you very much. Very much welcome all in the name of the Delft University of Technology, and particularly the Faculty of Architecture and Built Environment. We give you a very warm welcome. Our Dean, Professor Dick van Gameren, sent his greetings and wish us the best. In his own words, nature-based solutions as the most advanced tool to counteract the climate change variability and the environmental crisis is test as a strategy that need and combine the large amount of actors, researchers, and practitioners. So it's an essential step that this kind of encounters, a webinar to discuss the potentialities, dimensions, and forecasting of this typology of tools are already being expanded by this initiative. So I would like to wish you a very good day. And in the name of Delft University of Technology, we would like to thank the two main coordinators, Delta Alliance, and the Fundación Torcuato di Tella, which together with the Embassy of the Netherlands in Argentina make this possible, particularly and above all Professor Carlino and our pillar of this effort, which is Veronica Zagare. Dr. Zagare, thank you so much, and we wish you a fantastic good day. And I hope a good session, a good next 3 week session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diego. Well, I want to also thank the Sociedad Central de Arquitectos, which president is architect Darío López, and architect Valeria del Puerto, which is the president of the Professional Council of Architecture and Urbanism. Now we are going to start. We are a little late, so it's good for us if we begin. After this institutional opening, and before starting with the keynote presentations, I want to explain you a little bit what is this webinar series about. We are concerned because historically there has been a tradition of solving problems with great infrastructure, which in some cases it's suitable, but in other cases is not good enough to face the challenges of the new years. So among these challenges, we can mention the excessive and unplanned growth of cities, changes in land use, scarcity of drinking water, vulnerability to climate change. So it is important that during the last decades, the value of the nature has been valued and recognized to meet the social, environmental, and economic challenges. So given the complexity of this subject, we chose to divide this webinar series into 3 sessions in a weekly sequence. During this month, we're starting with this webinar today, and we're having a second webinar next week and a third webinar in the week of November 25. And in each one of the webinars, we are focusing on different dimensions. Today, we are focusing on the concept and general considerations of nature-based solutions. In the second webinar, we are going to delve into the dimension of design, planning, and governance. And in the third webinar, we are focusing on business models and circular economy. Each one of the webinars is structured in 4 stages. First, there is an institutional opening. Then we have the exposition of keynote speakers and cases of nature-based solutions. In the third part, we are going to discuss in groups in different languages. And finally, we are having an exposition of the conclusions of the groups and the closure of the day. The main idea is to start in a plenary meeting. Then so we can hear the main expositions of the keynote speakers and the cases. Then we are going to be divided into 7 groups in different languages, in Spanish, English, and Chinese. And then we are going back to the plenary meeting to express and present the reflections that have been discussed in the groups. I'm going to give you some brief recommendations. This webinar is going to be recorded. The cameras and microphones of the participants will be disabled during the plenary sessions. And during the discussion groups, the cameras and microphones of all the participants will be enabled, so you can chat directly to the moderators of each one of the groups. Then we suggest if you are going to speak in these discussion groups, we suggest you to turn off all the notifications in your computer, like WhatsApp or Skype, not to avoid any interference with the chat. There will be a brief space for questions, maybe 2 or 3, after the exposition. So we please ask all the participants to write the questions in the chat. We are going to select 2 or 3 questions and we're going to ask the speaker about it. And finally, we are going to ask the participants if they can rename themselves when they go to the groups, and after their name and surname, if they can put the city where they belong. It will be very interesting for the moderators to see the origin of each one of the participants during the discussion. Finally, I'm going to review the program of the day. We already had the institutional opening and the introduction. We are having the expositions of Dr. Emmanuel Cohen-Shasham and Dr. Nikki Francescaki. And then we are going to have the presentation of 2 cases, one of the Netherlands and another one from Singapore and China. Finally, we are going to the discussion groups and close the day. Well, we're starting with the presentation of Dr. Emmanuel Cohen-Shasham. She is a consultant, researcher, and group lead in the fields of nature conservation, environmental science and policy, working in academic institutes, governmental, and for non-profit organizations. Emmanuel has contributed to developing the International Union for Conservation work on nature-based solutions since 2014, and she led the IUCN CEM thematic group of NBS. She led the publication Nature-Based Solution to Address Global Societal Changes, the 2019 paper on the IUCN core principles for NBS, and she was closely involved in the development of the global standards for NBS. She studied environmental sciences at Tel Hai College, Israel, and Wageningen University, the Netherlands, and she did her PhD on the link between the provision of ecosystem services and ecosystem management in the Mediterranean wetlands at Tel Aviv University, Israel. Welcome, Emmanuel. I give you the word, so you can start.
Hello. Does it work? Oh, I need to share my screen, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, I hope it works. There are a lot of different windows open. So good morning. Thank you very much, Veronica, and thank you to all the speakers before. I would like to thank you for inviting me to participate in this webinar series and sharing with you today the work that IUCN, so the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and CEM, which is the Commission on Ecosystem Management within CEM, have been developing in the past few years on specifically on nature-based solutions. And to all the people that are seeing the webinar, different parts of the world, buenos dias, goedemorgen, goedemiddag. And it's an honor to be part of this webinar. I hope I'll provide a more general, I would say, presentation on what nature-based solutions or NBS are. And so I hope it will be helpful for the different, as an introductory presentation for the webinar series. So the contents of my presentation today, I will start with presenting you very briefly, and I try to do it as brief as possible, the evolution of nature-based solutions, or NBS. This is just to give some kind of general background on how fast nature-based solutions and how broadly the concept of nature-based solutions has evolved over the past few years. Then I'll present more in detail the conceptual and the definitional framework for nature-based solutions that IUCN has developed. I will focus more on our work on the NBS principles. I'll present a few examples of NBS, and I'll finish just by touching very briefly on the global standard for nature-based solutions that IUCN has launched just in the summer. So, just remove this. Oop. Just sorry. Oop. Okay. So with regards to the timeline or the evolution of the development of nature-based solutions, so NBS or nature-based solution has been first used officially in 2002 in a publication. But since then there has been, as I said, a huge development and increase of the concept. There were a series of events, some of them very meaningful. In 2014, there was a workshop that was organized by Diversa, and in which the typology, the first definition and the first typology of NBS was developed and brainstormed by Egermont and colleagues. Then in 2017, there was international conference in Tallinn, Estonia, specifically on nature-based solutions. And then since then, there has been a very large increase of events. These are just to name a few. In January 2019, there was an international conference on nature-based solutions in the Mediterranean basin, with a lot of countries around the Mediterranean basin that were discussing different aspects of nature-based solutions. In July of 2020, there was the NBS Digital Dialogues that was organized by the NBS Initiative in Oxford, and that was also a large event specifically focusing on NBS. And of course, there are a lot of webinars, just like the one that you're organizing at the moment. I've seen them in Europe, of course, a lot of NBS webinars in South America and Mesoamerica, in Southeast Asia, and so on. So I would like to congratulate you on organizing this. Then in terms of online platforms or initiatives specifically that were specifically established to work on nature-based solution, there is the OPLAF platform and the Think Nature platform and the Nature-Based Solutions Initiative within the Oxford University, which also develops like the interface between science and policy, I would say. And a lot of research is coming on nature-based solutions specifically from the NBS initiative. Then the European Commission has made NBS as part of its Horizon 2020 research and innovation program, and has invested in a series of projects to build up a better evidence for NBS. And of course, there is a huge amount of work and research that is a result of this Horizon 2020 on nature-based solutions specifically. Then with regards to policy, whether it's international or national policy, just to mention a few of those examples, one of the speakers, Professor Carlino, I believe, I'm sorry if I misspell you, has just mentioned the link with the biodiversity crisis, the link to climate crisis, and even to health crisis. So this is, so indeed, nature-based solutions are one of the solutions, one of the themes that are pushed forward, whether it's, these are just a few examples, but in the recent, in September, there was the Global Biodiversity Outlook that was published by the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, for instance, or in the Climate Summit Week that took place in September. NBS was also put very much forward as one of the solutions or to address these societal challenges. And beside that, these are just a few examples, as I said, and beside the link to NBS in the international arena, I would say, of political arena, there is also at the national scale some important initiatives and some countries that are already started not only supporting the idea of nature-based solutions, but also specifically developing national policy on nature-based solutions. Here's one of the publications that came from the government in France, but I know there are some similar initiatives in Costa Rica, and I believe in Colombia as well. In terms of literature, whether it's scientific, so white literature or gray literature, there is a lot of literature that has been increasing in the past few years. There was one first publication on natural solutions, so the link with protected area that I'll go into a little later, that was published in 2010. There are a number, in the past 2-3 years, there have been a number of books, of chapters in books that are specifically linked to nature-based solutions, whether it's in the climate change context or nature-based solution to address water in the water arena or in the water sector, or all and of course there is an exponential increase in scientific literature that is specifically focusing on NBS. So with regards to, I'll go now into presenting our work at, as I said, IUCN and the Commission on Ecosystem Management at IUCN. So the work that was specifically developed on NBS has started in 2012 at the World Conservation Congress at the WCC. Since shortly afterwards, NBS became one of the 3 pillars or one of the priority of IUCN for within their global program. So the first step was to develop a definitional framework for NBS, and that work that started in 2014, that was based on a lot of previous work of IUCN, of course, resulted in 2 meaningful milestones, I would say. One is a publication on nature-based solutions to address global societal challenges that was published and launched in 2016 at the next WCC, and a resolution on defining what nature-based solution that was adopted by the IUCN community as a whole, also at the WCC. Then after that, we further developed the work on the NBS principle. I'll go into it. And then this was the basis, the foundation, I would say, for developing the next step, the operational framework for nature-based solutions, with the launch of the global standard for nature-based solution that was just recently done in July. So what are nature-based solutions? According to IUCN, nature-based solutions are actions to protect, to manage, and to restore natural or modified ecosystems to address societal challenges effectively and adaptively, providing both human well-being and biodiversity benefits. So it's a series of different concepts. It's kind of an umbrella of different concepts that are based on different types of ecosystems to address different societal challenges, and they always have to result in benefits for human and for nature. And by these main societal challenges, the one that IUCN has identified as the main ones that IUCN is targeting, I would say, climate change and disaster risk, and social and economic development, human health, food security, water security, and ecosystem degradation and biodiversity loss. In addition to that definition, since there was a lot of misunderstanding, or in order to clarify what NBS are really including, in addition to the definition we added, or we set a list of 8 preliminary principles for nature-based solutions, which help to better understand what NBS are. So first of all, nature-based solutions embrace nature conservation. It's not, NBS are not there to replace nature conservation norms or principles, but more to complement nature conservation. The second principle is that NBS can be complemented with other types of solutions to societal challenges. Of course, the ones that are mostly used are engineering solutions, as they were already mentioned. But it can be different types of tools, such as awareness raising, for instance. Then the third principle for NBS are that they are determined by site-specific, natural, and cultural contexts that include both traditional, local, and scientific knowledge. The fourth principle is that they produce societal benefits in a fair and equitable way, in a way that promotes transparency and promotes broad participation among different type of stakeholders. The fifth principle is that they maintain biological and cultural diversity and the ability of ecosystems to evolve over time. The sixth principle is that NBS should be applied or designed with the at landscape scale. I will get back to this afterwards. The seventh one is that they recognize and they address the trade-offs between the production of a few immediate economic benefits for development and future option for the production of the full range of ecosystem services that can be provided. And the last one is that they're integrated. NBS have to be integrated in the overall design of policies, of measures, of action, and this is in order to address specific challenges. So as I said, we consider at ICN, we found it easier to conceptualize NBS as an umbrella type of concept, which incorporate a lot of different existing and well-based concepts and approaches that are all based on or related to ecosystems that are targeting societal challenges. So some of these examples, for instance, and we found it easy to categorize the NBS umbrella into 5 different categories of concepts that are related to protection, such as area-based conservation, or concepts that are issue-specific, such as ecosystem-based adaptation, ecosystem-based mitigation, ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction. Those that are more related to infrastructure, such as green infrastructure in urban context, or natural infrastructure. Then the ones that are related more to management type approaches, such as ecosystem-based management approaches, or integrated water resource management. And last, the ecosystem restoration type of approaches, such as ecosystem restoration, ecological engineering, or forest landscape restoration. So briefly, very briefly, I want to illustrate here hypothetical scenario to underline, I would say, 2 major points that are mentioned in the principles. One is that NBS can complement or be complemented by different types of measures, and in this specific case, there will be engineered and protected areas. And the fact that NBS can involve the use of natural areas or conservation measures in order to achieve its objective. So here we have a hypothetical scenario where there is a protected area that was first established in order to conserve a certain type of species, and there is a watershed here with different settlements. There is a forest in the watershed, there are mangroves on the coastline, and there are small villages and agricultural fields. So naturally, the storms, whether it's coming from inland or from the sea, can be absorbed by the natural ecosystems. But with time, there is deforestation around this watershed, and there is degradation of the forest and the wetland ecosystems, as well as the construction of a city here. And the remaining forest, well, the natural ecosystem can no longer absorb the surge of water and the storms. And in this case, then remaining forest in the protected area will play a critical role to absorb the floods. And here we can see the NBS, which is a combination between different things. There is both forest landscape restoration that is done here with the support of that protected area that was originally established for another purpose. There is ecological restoration here, coastal resilience with the planting of mangrove on the coastline. There is wetlands restoration here. Within the city, there is also green infrastructure that is being implemented. And in addition to those nature-based solutions, there is the complementarity of using this wall, so more engineering, gray engineering, in order to complement and ensure that the NBS is properly addressing the societal challenges. In this case, climate change, I would say, and disaster risk and human health, probably, and food security as well. So the conceptual and the definitional framework that I've very briefly mentioned here is much more detailed in the 2016 publication on nature-based solutions to address global societal challenges. And this is the first part of the book. The second part is presenting a number of 10 different case studies that are for each of them. You can see that they are in a completely different geographical context. They are addressing different types of societal challenges with different types of nature-based solutions intervention. So, and these are considered as successful NBS case studies. So I invite you to have a look at this. Just to give one example within that book, there is the Barcelona that developed green infrastructure in urban contexts with green walls, with roof basin to improve air quality, to support wastewater treatment, and to reduce stormwater runoff and water pollution, as well as to improve the quality of life for residents. And in this case, beside the green infrastructure tools that are more used in the urban context, the NBS was also complemented by some awareness raising tools such as bioblist events outside of the city or within the city, or community gardens that the community is establishing. So as I said, we further developed the work on the principles for NBS in this paper. So I would just mention something because the time is short. What we wanted to do here is take all the 8 principles of NBS and compare them to other principles in published ecosystem-based or ecosystem-related approaches, and compare those principles and understand if NBS can really serve as an umbrella types umbrella, and also what are the principles that are different or that need to be underlined, and what is missing also in the NBS framework. And what we found out is that there are 3 principles: the one on complementarity, the one on landscape level, and the one on integrating NBS intervention, that are very different from other types of approaches, and that that need to be considered and very much underlined in the operational framework of NBS. And also that there were some specific terms of that were missing or not sufficiently emphasized, such as adaptive management and governance, effectiveness of the intervention, uncertainty, multi-stakeholder participation, and temporal scale and long-term stability of the NBS that have to be underlined in the operational framework. So just, I won't go into this, but what I want to show you is that work that we have done on the definition and the conceptual framework used as foundation, kind of the foundation, the scientific basis for the development of the global standard for nature-based solutions. And both those terms that were missing and those principles were very much taken into account in the development of the global standard with those 8 criteria and 28 indicators within the global standard. So in July, I won't go into this at all, but there is, just for your information, in 2 weeks, there will be a CM event that will be specifically presenting the global standard for nature-based solutions. And you can contact me if you're interested in seeing this on the 23rd of November. But there is, in July, at the end of July, we launched the IUCN Global Standard for Nature-Based Solution, both in a publication that you can find online with a very concise publication with the 8 criteria and the indicators, as well as a much more detailed guidance for using the global standard for nature-based solutions. And the importance in the global standard for nature-based solutions is both to have some kind of work tool for assessing if an NBS is strong or how to improve it, and have some kind of consistent framework to work with in developing, designing, and implementing nature-based solutions. And this is supposed to be used by a very large range of stakeholders. So just to show you the 8 criteria, very generally, there are societal challenges on taking NBS that need to be designed at scale, as I said, on biodiversity net gain. This is one of the goals for NBS, that NBS should be economically feasible, that there is incorporating governance, inclusive governance as part of the NBS development and implementation, that trade-off should be balanced as part of the design and the implementation, that there is adaptive management and mainstreaming and sustainability. As I said, the integration, it's really important to integrate NBS in policy, in action, and in measures. So I won't go into this at all because we have, because my time is over, and I'm really sorry that I had to speed up, but please feel free to contact me. There is my email address here if you have further questions, whether it's on our work on NBS or on the global standard, and if you would like to be part of the governance structure of the global standard that is currently being developed, you may become one of the users and use the global standard. Please feel free to contact us, and of course, if you want to attend the event in 2 weeks from now.
Okay, thank you very much, Emmanuel. This was a very interesting presentation. I want to present now. I'm going to present now Dr. Nikki Francescaki. She is a research professor on urban sustainability transitions and director of the Center for Urban Transition at Swinburne University of Technology, Melbourne, Australia. Nikki has published close to 100 peer-reviewed articles, and in the last 3 years, she released 4 books on urban sustainability transitions. She has also edited 18 special issues in top-ranked journals about sustainability and sustainability transitions. She brings international research experience with a portfolio of ongoing projects of nature-based solutions in cities. She has coordinated research on environmental governance and urban sustainability transitions by leading and being involved in an extensive portfolio of research projects. Thank you, Nikki. Welcome, and if you can share your screen.
Yes. You need to, yes, thank you. Oh. Patience, just give me a second. It worked before. Okay, let me try again.
Yes.
Yep. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, it works. Perfect. And we need to again the view to be different because I have 2 screens, so that's why it was.
Oh, yes, yes.
Just give it a second. Okay. Good afternoon from my side. It's 2 o'clock after midnight in Melbourne. So I want to say thank you for inviting me, and thank you for organizing such a very interesting webinar series. I'm honored and thankful to participate, of course. Before starting my presentation, I want to acknowledge the country and the traditional owners, past, present, emerging, the land of which we are working on and live with Swinburne University of Technology here in Australia. So, well, it's almost good morning, Melbourne, and good morning, Argentina. And taking up from the very good presentation of Emmanuel, I want to include and I want to add to this using mainly the definition developed from the European Commission and the working groups that they're also provide an evidence base on the state of the art, especially in Europe, about the research and the umbrella concept of nature-based solutions. So in addition to the previous presentation, I want to actually stress that nature-based solutions are the non-conventional solutions to deal with environmental challenges, while at the same time providing multiple benefits to economy, society, and ecological systems. So nature-based solutions are systemic solutions that they provide multiple benefits across all the dimensions of sustainability. They use nature, they're inspired by nature, but they also support and restore nature and natural flows in the environments and places that they are being implemented. It is very important to look on alternative sustainable solutions and especially systemic solutions to deal with current trends when we look especially the planetary basis and the planetary acceleration trends of our era. My research focused mainly on cities and urban environments, and with research we have been doing with a Future Earth, a knowledge network on cities, on urban, we identified that all the current trends, fast and slow, they actually influence the relation between nature and people. Nature-based solutions come exactly to create a more livable, just and sustainable environment in a very systemic way. And yes, we see multiple challenges in urban areas, but what we also see is that current urbanization trends, pressures from use of infrastructure, societal change in terms of different needs, different expectations, and different demands of the intensity of use of urban infrastructure come all together and entangled on how climate change pressures play out in this. We see infrastructures in urban environments being quickly eroding and in need of major reinvestments. It is an opportunity for cities, especially, to rethink and reimagine what type and how these urban infrastructures need to be regenerated. From our research, we saw that nature-based solutions actually are valid and feasible alternatives for urban environments to regenerate their infrastructures in order not only to deal with climate adaptation, but also respond to a wide array of urban challenges, such as green space management, air quality, health, public health and well-being, social justice, as well as recovery through green jobs. Of course, this research was stimulated based and especially based on evidence that we did in a large scale of review back in 2017 as part of the Eclipse project. Fast forward to 2020, and in the midst of a global pandemic, what we actually see is that all green areas, urban ecosystems, novel ecosystems, and remnant ecosystems in cities, they have been actually the oases that people looked at, discovered, rediscovered, and actually used so as to reconnect with communities, reconnect with place, but at the same time deal with mounting mental health and physical health challenges during this pandemic and the measures enforced across the cities. We also see that nature-based solutions have kept strong in the agendas and also being discussed as major strategies for recovery and redesign of cities post-pandemic. As Emmanuel also outlined, there has been a mainstreaming and a strong uptake of nature-based solutions, creating also evidence and knowledge on nature-based solutions in European Union. However, the nature-based solutions research agenda is rather global. What you need to keep in mind is what differentiates them apart from the nature element, how they restore, contribute, employ, but also innovate with nature, is that they are systemic solutions, meaning they are integrated, they create feedback loops, and they are also require multiple actors, they require multiple knowledges, they deliver multiple services, and they can also amplify the benefits they have, especially if they are culturally, socially, and planning-wide integrated. Having this understanding of how nature-based solutions can be central into creating relations with nature, relations with culture, and a fast-forward agenda into dealing with climate change, we see a proliferation of their research, but also their applications around the globe. In a submitted manuscript, we did a review of the reviews of nature-based solutions and looked on what is the state of the art currently. Some of our findings from 114 reviews of nature-based solutions that we conducted, we find that NBS is now widely and strongly understood as an umbrella concept, bringing different approaches and different interventions under one, you might say, quite pluriform definition. So research from urban forestry, green infrastructure, ecosystem services, ecosystem-based adaptation, sustainable urban water drainage systems, and other environmental engineering and environmental management approaches, they come all together under this umbrella. This creates quite of a strong argument of why to invest and why to look on these solutions against gray solutions, traditional, conventional solutions to deal with these challenges. In terms of where are the epicenters of research and knowledge, we see that Europe and United States, they hold knowledge and wide application of nature-based solutions globally. However, Asia and other areas such as Latin America, they come more prominently over the last years into the knowledge, you might say, into the knowledge landscape of nature-based solutions. What is the evidence? Back in 2014, when we did the first large-scale review on ecosystem services and urban biodiversity, one of the gaps of knowledge that we identified was how ecosystem services, green infrastructure, nature and city relates with health. Nowadays, we have a very strong evidence of positive health outcomes from engaging with nature, of different scales and of different sizes and of different types of nature in cities. Another strong evidence base that we have is that nature-based solutions, they are effective and sufficient solutions to deal with water challenges, especially flooding. At the same time, we see that the research and the practice of nature-based solutions creates quite of a hybridization, novel approaches, new types of NBS are emerging, but also hybrids of NBS are also emerging. And this is because the research on nature-based solutions is also globalizing. NESE in Australia, New Zealand, Latin America, and the Caribbean, and also Africa, we see new types, new knowledge, all nature-based solutions being present. I move to my second part of the presentation on from the knowledge, from the evidence of how do we bring from the concept to actually having nature-based solutions as part of reality in cities. We have seen and we have systematized into a framework of assessing, implementing and scaling nature-based solutions, looking on the different planning steps, but also the different steps on mainstreaming and transforming cities, and expand from the proof of concept to actually see nature-based solutions as core portfolio solutions in cities. What we identified with the work we did with the Eclipse and published in 2017 and used rather widely across research projects in Europe especially, is that it is very important to go and assess what is the capacity, readiness, but also knowledge and different types of knowledge available in co-creation, in co-production, but also in bridging and integration for bringing nature-based solutions to the life of cities. Research from the Connecting Nature project that I was highly involved until last year, and now as part of the advisory board, continue being engaged and also taking part of it. We looked more closely into what cities need in order to implement nature-based solutions at scale. And we talk about citywide applications and citywide demonstrators of nature-based solutions in cities across Europe that build and capitalize from the existing experience, but also connect the various and pluriform types of social innovations, nature-based innovations, economic innovations, and also governance innovations in order to scale them up. What we found across 3 pioneering cities of Scotland, Poznan, and Genk is it is paramount to have a very clear knowledge on different types of nature-based solutions, on evaluating and monitoring them so as to make a case, to make a business case for nature-based solutions, but also to understand their very nature, their multifunctionality, the different types, and how they fit in the social, cultural, and political context and the landscape, the ecology of the city that they are going to be embedded, transformed, but also be integrated as well. Another highlight is that we identified together with cities that in order to implement nature-based solutions, it is important to work with multiple actors and create very diverse types of partnerships. Partnerships not only with citizens, but also partnerships with communities of practice, communities of interest as well. And this is something that I have to say that similar findings on looking closer on cities around Australia also, research that I have been conducting and is ongoing, actually we conclude similar results. We see very many similarities in terms of how important partnerships with different stakeholders are to promote learning, to create deep learning and engagement with the concept of nature-based solutions, but also with engineering knowledge, the cultural knowledge, and ecological knowledge that and the policy knowledge that are required so as to design well, plan and govern well nature-based solutions. Another aspect is about the knowledge that is needed. And I come back and forth with the aspect of knowledge, not only as a capital and a capacity, but also as a motivator for actually experimenting, creating innovations with nature-based solutions in cities. There are two key messages that they come across to the last research that I have been publishing and that I have been also working here in Australia. There are two aspects of knowledge that us as researchers and also in partnership and in co-creation and co-production with practitioners and policymakers we need to take into consideration. First, we need to systematize knowledge. And this is very crucial since the knowledge and the research and the practice of nature-based solutions is globalizing. And as we hybridize, design new, create and innovate new types of nature-based solutions, we need to really also, in parallel, create frameworks, revisit frameworks, but so as to allow us to systematize the knowledge and the evidence base that we are creating. The second point is that we need to innovate for these typologies. We need to create novel typologies and synthesis so as to see and ask different questions to all the data and to all the knowledge that we are gathering. We need to look on which type of NBAs contribute to different urban challenges so as to have ready transferable knowledge for practitioners to base new plans, new climate adaptation, urban biodiversity, and also urban health plans for cities. We also need to look closely to the ecology, to the settings, and to the landscapes that nature-based solutions are implemented. We need to look on the different geographies, but also to the different scales and to the different opportunities created by, but also seized by nature-based solutions. It is important, since we talk about the knowledge and the knowledge perspective, to also take into consideration that nature-based solutions, when co-created, they can actually deliver more inclusive and just urban environments. It is important to look on ways to implement, to design, to manage, and also to maintain and scale nature-based solutions that take into consideration place meanings, communities and knowledges beyond the usual suspects. Look on indigenous, local, expert and non-expert knowledge all together on how they can actually improve the design and implementation of nature-based solutions. This is something that so far has been pointed by research. We address it, we look on experimentation as a way to integrate and co-create nature-based solutions and wave in different knowledges. However, I have to say that it is work in progress. In the work we did with Resilient Europe in the city of Antwerp and together with 11 other cities, we see that is not only scientific knowledge, but is also we need to complement this with dialogues with citizens. We need to bring together not only our brains and to mobilize our knowledge, but also we need to touch the hearts and the sentiments of people. We need to look closer on narratives, storylines, history, art, music to actually create these novel landscapes that we want in our cities. Not only to approach nature-based solutions as engineering solutions, but as more systemic solutions for sustainability and resilience. In Australia, this has been done also in a way by looking where are opportunity spaces that nature and especially renaturing can take a major role on how we create amenities, how we create climate buffers and climate adaptation. In Greening the Grey Fields is one of those projects that actually looked in the in-between space, the space between the urban and the suburbs and suburbanization in cities, and finding how greening the grey fields can actually create not only ecological corridors and ecological connections, but also amenities for people and climate adaptation opportunity spaces. In different parts of the globe, if you look on megacities in the United States, and if you look closely on New York, for example, you see also cases and examples on microgreen spaces. How can we look on forgotten spaces, on spaces that they have not been utilized, but can make a major impact in the communities and a major impact in restoring our connection with nature, and how these are becoming and have become the places to pilot different types of nature-based solutions. The challenge we have now is how smaller scale, place-based, experimental nature-based solutions can be connected to the landscape level with more citywide infrastructure solutions that they take nature-based solutions at core. Another challenge when planning and implementing nature-based solutions is how to close the planning cycle, how to go from ideation, master planning, implementation, design, urban design, landscaping, engagement with stakeholders and making it inclusive, all the way to change statutory planning and the regulation and the law for planning in cities. This requires not only multiple partnerships and engagement of multiple stakeholders, but it also requires a more transdisciplinary approach to planning and to research and to the collaboration with a science policy interface. Coming closer to the conclusion of my presentation, it is important to think also and interrogate the future research of nature-based solutions, of what it means for justice in cities, for creating equal opportunities, but also for addressing and try to unearth and unroot persistent injustices that we see, especially in megacities. And it is not only about including stakeholders, it is also about bringing the ecological knowledge closer to the social and policy knowledge that is required. A very practical example, how do we design ecological corridors? How do we decide between two different types of NBS that even in a specific or in a specified landscape, they can be equally suitable of producing the necessary benefits and co-benefits for addressing the challenges at hand. In the cities of Burgas in Bulgaria, we were having these discussions with planners on how can you redesign and how can you regenerate urban infrastructure in a deprived neighborhood, a sealed urban creek that has created a lot of damages that also amplifies the flooding risk, and how can you, what would be the type of NBS to put in such a location so as to deal and with social segregation and to reconnect with nature and the nearby wetland, but at the same time dealing with flooding. With consultation with citizens, they prefer to have an urban park to remove the cement, to remove the impermeable surfaces, and create an urban park for this neighborhood. Also, agreeing that reduction of parking places can be also and give more space for this urban park. And in this way, create a small pocket, you might say, flood buffer, and at the same time, a space for encounter, for kids to play, and for neighborhoods to re-establish their relationship with a community. At the same time, another solution, another type of NBS was to actually sunlight the urban creek, restore the urban creek, and create you might say a blue nature-based solutions in the area. When we're discussing that both options are nature-based solutions, there is engineering knowledge, there is ecological knowledge, and community would be happy with both actually. But what would be the type of NBS that will ensure that the connections between the different areas of the neighborhood, they remain and they don't create further divides? There is where the role of urban planning, urban design and landscape design come in place. And earthing up of an urban creek without a proper urban design, consultation with the communities, can also be seen as a further division between the neighborhood area, and further deepen the injustices, the separations, and the loss of sense of place that the community already was experiencing. An urban park, on the other sense, when again properly designed and properly placed, and even co-maintained with a community, can become the place that connects and reconnects and set the first stones towards more inclusive and more connected communities in place. Why I'm mentioning this case study is exactly to think about when you, as a practitioner, as a researcher, as a policymaker, or even as a citizen, taking place in discussions about regenerating, redesigning, reimagining cities with nature-based solutions, we need also to think how all these places and spaces shape us, how they shape how we interact, how we connect, and how we live our life in cities. I want to stop with this slide and say that, second, that science has a major role in transformative change, and science for nature-based solutions has also a major role to play in making our cities and our planet more sustainable, living in a more just, livable, and resilient way. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Nikki. Thank you for staying so late to give this excellent presentation. You were very clear about the aspects of MBS and also the lessons learned from the MBS. We have some questions. We are very lack of time, but I would like to synthesize the ideas. The people ask. You have shown some examples of MBS application in some countries, but they ask what about other contexts like Latin America or maybe Asia? Which is which are the recommendations from you for a successful application of MBS in cities?
Thank you very much for the question. I have to say I have worked in Latin America together with Brazilian government, and I have visited a number of areas, and we have a very successful initiative back in 2016 and 17 about thinking on how we can bring nature-based solutions and how we can learn from nature-based solutions from Latin America. This dialogue still continues, of course, since it's initiated by Brazil is in Portuguese. That's another language to master for this. But what I found as something that especially researchers and practitioners from Latin America can contribute is bringing the different forms of knowledge and experiences, especially in environments that they're more tropical, that they have different types of habitats, and cities that they have different types of formations. So nature-based solutions and the way forward is to understand also historical NBS, to understand that they are multidisciplinary solutions, and they also require as I say, to create novel typologies that they also respond to the specific climatic and ecological habitats. As I showed, there is very deep knowledge that comes from Europe and from United States. And most of the strong evidence we have is about nature-based solutions responding to water challenges. But what about heat? What about drier climates? What about tropical or subtropical ecological landscapes, and how nature-based solutions can create and restore ecological corridors and ecological functions? I think that would be the most interesting thing to see from Latin America. In terms of Asia and China, the Sponge Cities program is something that we all wait to learn from, and we want to see what type of innovations, what type of hybridization of nature-based solutions took place, and whether this can be replicated in other cities and other continents.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your answer. We have more questions, but we are lack of time. So if you don't mind, we can send it. We can send the questions through email, and then we'll go back to the participants with your response. So
no,
thank
definitely.
you very much.
Would be happy to do that.
Emmanuel, thank you for everything. And Emmanuel Cohen-Shasham has had to leave, so the questions for her will be sent through email, and then we'll go back to the participants. I'm going to present the next speaker. We are having 2 more presentations, and then we go to the discussion groups. The first presentation will be recorded, is about the case of Room for the River in the Netherlands. The speaker is Emeritus Professor Dr. Han Meyer. He graduated as an urbanist at TUDelft and completed his PhD thesis on the transformation of port cities in 1997. He was working in the urban renewal process at the Rotterdam City Planning Department from 1980 to 1990. Since 1990, he is employed at TUDelft, first as an associate professor urban design from 2001 until last year as full professor urban design theories and methods. He published on the fundamentals of urbanism and on the special condition for urban design in Delta regions. We are going to pass this presentation, which has been recorded yesterday.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to be here with you and to tell you a story about Room for the River, river management in the Netherlands. My name is Han Meyer. I'm Emeritus Professor of Urban Design in TUDelft, Technical University in Delft, and very much involved in Delta areas. And for us, the Room for the River program is a very important program which changed a lot in the Netherlands and gives new perspectives about the question how to deal with river management in delta areas in relation to urban development. What is it? In the program of Room for the River, I'll try to focus on 4 questions. What are the backgrounds? So why was this Room for the River program developed? Second, what exactly, what scope of the implementation? I will focus on 2 examples, 2 projects in this program to clarify what is exactly the content, and some last words I'd like to spend to the future, how to continue with ever changing perspectives concerning sea level rise and river discharges. So first, why Room for the River? It has everything to do with the picture I show here in the slide. It shows the territory of the Netherlands. with a lot of rivers, water, and which moves as a very dynamic and resilient system. As a matter of fact, originally this wasn't a resilient system. Of course, a number of floods occurred in the past, but after every flood, you can say that the system restored itself and added also a lot of new sediment layers to the country. Also, the rivers themselves, they changed many times their courses to find the best way to the sea. And this whole dynamic system changed during the last 1.5 century into a very controlled system. When mankind, because of possibilities of steam power, electric power, oil power, enormous possibilities were created to reshape, you can say, to redesign the whole river system into a very controlled system, equipped with sluices, locks, dams, dikes, and controlling exactly how much water through each branch of the river could flow. And on the one hand, this was a situation which created a lot of benefits. It created a lot of safety, where the Netherlands before the 19th century was flooded frequently. Big parts of the river area and of the coastal area were confronted with serious floods. You can say now during the last 50, 60 years, we didn't experience any flood anymore. And it resulted also in enormous economic welfare. In the heart of the Delft area, the lowest part of the country, the most urbanized and most economic development took place right there. So, and this was an enormous benefit from this control system. But in the same time, you can say we were more and more aware of the big the big problems which were created by this controlled river system. First, especially from the end of the 1960s, 1970s, an increasing awareness on the consequences for the degradation of the natural environment, not only in the Netherlands itself, but worldwide, with the report of the Club of Rome, like the limits of growth, was very important, which meant also that a lot of protests against this control system with the problems for the natural environment was increasing. And as one of the results of this, you can see an increasing amount of experiments in the 1970s and especially in the 1980s to develop another way of approach the river system. The important moment was a competition in 1987 dedicated to the river system, which was won by a young group, landscape architects and civil engineers, which played an important role later on in the Room for the River program. And based on this winning project, also a first experiment, like a pilot project, was implemented in the river area, the so-called Blue Room, near the city of Wageningen. Related to that, also the very top-down character of decision-making in the water management system in the Netherlands was more and more something of big protests of citizens and NGOs who requested, as a matter of fact, also more participation and more input of their own ideas about their own environment, how to get in further decision making. And third, what was very important and was finally the reason to develop a new program for the river area was a series of very high water events in the 1990s. when the river area was confronted with situations which nearly resulted in big floods. One of these events in 1995, more than 200,000 people had to be evacuated from their homes to avoid that their homes would be flooded. Luckily, nothing happened, but it showed the crucial aspect and the very dangerous aspect of the river system. So also in the civil engineering world, there was increasing awareness that this very control system didn't control everything, not anymore. And the new developments in river discharges were not foreseen in the construction and design of the river system. So a major adaptation was necessary. And that was the reason to develop a new program starting in 2005. That is the program Room for the River, with an enormous budget of 2 billion euros. And it was a national program because the river system runs through the whole national territory of the Netherlands. It was based on the idea, which was, as a matter of fact, already proposed in this competition of the 1980s, that instead of that urbanization and economic development was leading and the natural system should follow the urban and economic development, it was turned 180 degrees around to the other side. And the new philosophy said we should create space for natural development, and we should develop urban systems and the economic development according to what is possible next to this natural development. So to meet the problems of the 70s and the 80s, the main aims of this program was to increase the discharge capacity of the River Rhine, especially from 12,000 to 60,000 cubic meters per second, and in relation with that, in combination with that, to take care also for a fundamental increase of spatial and ecological quality in the river area itself. And how to do that? Well, the program offered a number of possibilities. Here I showed just three. I put back the dikes, so instead of heightening, strengthening the existing dikes, creating more room for the river by putting back the dikes, or by lowering river plains, or by creating bypasses, or by a combination of two or all three of these possibilities. And then what was very important was the aim, how to meet the problems concerning too much top-down and not enough bottom-up development. So it's a national program which formulated some general restrictions, like the minimum discharge capacity, which had to improve, and the improvement of ecological and spatial quality. But the way how it should be implemented exactly in each project, that was left to local project teams, which could develop their own ideas. And very important in between switch was a quality team, which had to control once the general restrictions of the program were implemented, and at the same time with the local project teams, how to implement it and how to create enough flexibility to meet all kinds of local conditions of local context, local stakeholders, and local governments. This quality team were important civil engineer, important landscape architect, an important urbanist, important ecological expert, and an important hydraulic expert were forming together this team and taking care for the dialogue between top-down and bottom-up. This implemented, I will shortly focus on two projects. Nijmegen, which is in the eastern part of the Netherlands, and the Noordwaard, which is a polder just 20-25 kilometers from the city of Rotterdam, southeast of Rotterdam. First Nijmegen, which is a town of almost 200,000 inhabitants, completely situated, located on the south bank of the river Waal, but planning to extend the city on the other embankment of the river. And exactly on the same time, the program Room for the River came to the city and said, no, it's not possible to create this city extension on the north embankment because this area is necessary to create more room for the river. But first, that was a big shock, and it led to a lot of tension between national government and local authorities. But finally, after a lot of negotiations and 6-7 years of designing, redesigning, talking, and organizing meetings, a fantastic plan was created, developing a bypass through the north embankment of the river area, leaving a new island, which is now considered to be the most important urban park land in between old city and the new city on the other embankment. And also the city now is convinced this is a fantastic and much better solution than the original plan of 15 years ago. This is the final way how it looks, also in times of high water, when still the central park island in the middle of the river is connected very well with as well the north as the south embankments of the river. Then the Noordwaard. The Noordwaard was a big polder northeast of Rotterdam, which was necessary for creating a bypass during high water events only once in 5 to 10 years. The farmers in this polder, they were supposed to leave, and the national government made a reservation for big expenses to buy out these people and to create the condition that they could start their farms somewhere else in the country or in Canada or where else. But they protested against it, and they said, we want to stay and we better use that money to create new conditions for living in this polder, also where it will be flooded in high water events. So they spent the money together with paying a landscape architect and other people who helped them developing their plan to build new mounts in the polder, building their farms again newly upon these mounts and creating the condition that they could stay also in times of high water events. And that it really works like this showed just this year when there was in February 2020 a very high water event, discharge of the river. The complete polder was flooded, but you see very well how it works. The roads are high enough, again, to connect the farms, which also stayed dry upon the mounts in the water area. And the cattle, well, we know it 2-3 days before if there will be a high water event, so the farmers will have enough time to get the cattle inside and to stay dry and wait until the water drop and they can reuse them afterward again. So finally, this way of dealing with the water created a fundamental change in the whole way how water management is organized in the Netherlands. And the question is how to continue. Room for the River will be the last plan for the river areas, because it becomes clear that the current capacity of 16,000 cubic meters per second will be already overcharged in perhaps 30, 40 years. Then we can expect 80 or even 20,000 cubic meters per second. So there are now preparations, especially by some nature organizations like World Wildlife Fund and other organizations, together with involved stakeholders like people from the brick and gravel industry, water boards, shipping organizations, to develop a common idea based on the same basic idea as Room for the River, to increase the water discharge capacity of the rivers, and at the same time to increase also the conditions for all the different stakeholders related to the river area, to create a more comprehensive approach for this river area. And finally, the most problematic area is the river mouth, which was left out of the Room for the River program, which is the most complex area because it's the most urbanized and industrialized area. Here we are now developing new ideas how this very complex area can be reorganized in combination with also reorganization of the port area, which will be necessary in the future because energy transition will have a huge impact on the whole port. In the port of Rotterdam, 60% of land use is covered by fuel, the transshipment of fuel, the storage of fuel, or the processing of fuel, and this will change fundamentally. So there is now a big chance to create a new comprehensive idea how the river mouth can be organized in a more sustainable way, which will be also in the same kind of idea as Room for the River in the recent past, and which will also create a completely new type of urban landscape along the river side, up and down high and low water standards, and with more life or more conditions for natural life in the river estuary as it is. So what I can recommend very much is to read this book. It's a fantastic book written by people who were very closely involved in the Room for the River program, with fantastic stories and photographs, which gives a very good impression of what happened in this new program, which gives a new perspective for the rivers all over the world, I think. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for this presentation. It was very interesting. We are going now to the last presentation, which will be given by Attila Katona. He is a governance researcher, facilitator, and consultant with a current focus on unlocking the potential of nature in cities through innovation. He pursues a PhD at the Central European University and worked with clients such as the European Commission and the EIT Climate Kick, as well as public and private bodies in Canada, Russia, Asia, on urban transformation and environmental policy processes. He conducted research on innovative nature-based solutions in Singapore and North China, which will be presented during the webinar. So Attila, if you want to start.
Yes. Hi, guys. Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen and then we can proceed. Thank you very much for the opportunity. It is really a pleasure and an honor to speak after such esteemed speakers such as Nikki and Emmanuel, whose footsteps I've been following as a researcher. And so my current, the reason I am here is because I took part in a 4-year research process as a part of the Naturaleza project, which project was funded by the European Union, trying to somehow look into and address this substantial gap that was identified between the promise of nature-based solutions and their uptake. Why don't we have more good things? If we presume that nature-based solutions are good for us, what are the barriers? And so the project especially focused on this aspect of scaling, aspect of take-up, aspect of governance, and we worked directly with city partners. Actually, some of my colleagues will also present in the next weeks, the webinar series, so I look forward to also be here and listen to them. I just wanted to drop in one key outcome that many of you could be very much interested in, and that's this Urban Nature Atlas, which contains 1,000 nature-based solution examples from European cities. So this is specifically Europe, very much searchable. You can apply all sorts of filters. I think it's as fun as a database could be, and it's also there for you to explore. And another work stream that we did was going a little bit deeper, considering that nature-based solutions is a little bit, I would say, neoliberal Western concept. So we wanted to harvest learnings from diverging contexts, such as Latin America, for example, was brought up. We had Mexico City as a partner and a case, but we also were curious how First Nations people in Canada or urban farmers in South Africa consider this question, and what kind of factors influence the deployment and integration of urban nature-based solutions in different geographic contexts. And you can find all of these cases on our website, so you're welcome to explore. We also had a partner city in China, so Tianjin was also included. And I will present one case from this city through sort of Europeans researcher lens. So I will be curious to hear how our esteemed Chinese nationals, participants will think of highlighting this particular case and what do they know about it without looking very deeply into research materials. And since we're talking about knowledge transfer, I think it's interesting to see how organizational learning happened in this case, because it was a very strong organizational learning between nations, learning from Singapore and Singaporean technological governance and indicator solutions. And what I also wanted to mention to kind of frame the story is that a lot of the cases and projects that we look into are very much small scale kind of tinkering approaches, easy to adapt. The one that I will present now is more like a larger scale kind of top-down government-led deployment, but it's still interesting to see as one example of how nature-based solutions are scaled across the globe. So I think that everybody is aware of rapid urbanization that has been going on and is currently going on in China. In 40 years, the number of cities tripled. Urban population reached 800 million, and same trends happened also in Tianjin, our case city, coupled with some rapid growth in economy as well due to its position as a major harbor, kind of the harbor city of North China, close to Beijing, which also fueled its development. And the area that we are going to be looking at is in this rapidly developing sort of port/economic district, where they wanted to urbanize and deploy new eco-city solutions which is now, I would say, being mainstreamed in China. Locally, they have been struggling with certain urban challenges that many cities, many metropolises globally struggle with: air pollution, massive droughts, really high peak temperatures during summer days, massive heat waves, soil erosion, extremely low precipitation, which is also present here. And they also kind of try to respond to this with all sorts of policy and technological measures. And one of them was also mentioned by Nikki very briefly, and I'm glad she did that, because it's something that is really worth mentioning, is the Sponge City project, which aims to capture 75% of the rainfall in urban areas in Chinese cities, and achieve this level of capture in as many places as possible. And the case that I will present is one of the demonstration sites for the Sponge City project, the Sponge City approach, but it also is a demonstration project for the sort of this eco-city movement transformation that is happening in China. And I think it's worth to keep an eye on these processes. It's actually it is said to be the largest eco-city project in China currently. So as you can see on the top pictures, it was built on a former very chemically polluted sort of saline wasteland near the coast in an area which was reclaimed from the sea. It was an industrial area about 45 kilometers from Tianjin center. And as you can see on the middle and kind of the bottom pictures, it has been transformed quite substantially. It is planned to be used by 350,000 residents. Basically, a complete new city planning process has happened here. Currently, at least 2 years ago, there was approximately 90,000 residents, so it's being built as we speak. There's also some learning going on from the first phase to the second phase, from second phase to the third phase. Overall, the construction started about a decade ago, 12 years ago. The first phase, for the first 1/3 of the residence, was finished in 2012. Second phase is finishing approximately now, and the final completion is expected in a couple of years, although there has been some changes in the overall process because the area that they can use got extended, so they might want to adapt. And here I wanted to kind of show you this video without sound, just maybe it's a bit more engaging rather than pictures, and maybe just speak a little bit about how this planning happened, because we're talking about sort of a flagship bilateral project between Singapore and China. A lot of large-scale private sector involvement happened. There is approximately 50% ownership between Singaporean and Chinese stakeholders and investors. So they try to keep this sort of balance. And the Chinese and Singaporean government and institutions took a leading role in initiating this. But the organizational structure of the eco-city is more like a complex partnership with a lot of private sector investors. For them, opportunities were presented to create joint venture companies. And the reason for this is to maximize the value of the investment and minimize the financial burdens of the participating governments. Basically, the minimal amount of public funding that can be spent is the better. At the same time, stakeholders like the Singaporean actors and governments bring in a lot of expertise on the green infrastructure. As you can see on the screen, this is how it roughly looks like. They contributed to the water management, relying on China's Sponge City approach, but also Singapore's expertise in water management. And also they cooperated in the development of KPIs. A good example is these, another kind of contribution is these 400 by 400 meter living blocks called eco-cells that contain local amenities, and also this green infrastructure that you have just seen on the screen, which basically connects up the whole eco-city. And it was planned by the National Parks Board of Singapore. So it's maybe something different. I just want to move on to the next slide. Here you can find all the stakeholders that contributed and the role. If you're interested, there is a publication about it, in particular about the partnership structure and the funding structure. So I do not really want to dwell on it, but rather point out this key feature that I mentioned, and that's the NBS that we actually looked into. Besides the sparsity approach, this was also one of these, I would say, unique features that are very noteworthy. And this one kind of axis, this green spine or kind of this green infrastructure line that is connecting together all the districts of the eco-city. It's approximately 50 to 100 meter wide and 11 kilometer long, you know, kind of like a snake running through the city. And it has been a major contributor to the point city disciplines on how rainwater can be captured, harvested, stored, kept in the soil for longer times, and also stored in underground containers. And it also is building on this park connector concept coming from Singapore, that they are trying to basically link up all of the green infrastructure in the city in one organic system. And another interesting feature that is worth mentioning is this indicator system they have been following. They have indicators, basically targets such as achieving 12 square meter green space per capita, using only at least 70% native species, etc. So many of the major KPIs of the eco-city were connected to green infrastructure and nature-based solutions. And this is how approximately this green infrastructure spine looks like in a more narrow area, but you can see even when it is less than or approximately 50 meters, a lot of these key features such as rainwater capture and harvest and biological diversity are there and kind of squeezed in. And imagine this running for 11 kilometers. Some interesting takeaways, at least interesting for us and my colleagues, to discuss when it comes to looking into what is happening in China and what can we learn from such projects. And what we see is that environmental governance on a national level and the governance of nature-based solutions kind of on a city level depends a lot on how the state, the government is trying to balance economy, natural resources, and social goals. And what happens is going to be the outcome of this balancing process. And what we did notice is that there is currently a very urgent demand for improving quality of life for the urban middle class. The government considers it a very important social group, and they want to please them by avoiding the issues that happened 8 to 10 years ago, and you have probably all seen smog-infested megacities in China. We do not really see that anymore, at least not as much as 8 to 10 years ago when I actually first started working in China. And a lot of resources were mobilized, and a lot of the solutions were connected to scaling up nature in cities, and of course also transforming the traffic and the transport system and moving certain industries. But nature played a key role and still plays a key role. KPIs are very strong guiding forces. They have very, very robust KPI frameworks in all these projects, and the EcoCity example that I presented is kind of like a model. It is now being used in more than 20 other eco-cities across China. It would be probably interesting to see how these KPIs and goals align with IUCN's global standards that were presented by Emmanuel. These model project initiatives are really key tools for spreading and testing solutions and scaling them up. So that's certainly something to mention and note. And on the other hand, maybe contrary to how we think of the context specificity of NBS, and for example, the third principle that Emmanuel presented, in China, transfer between cities is very much encouraged, very much as part of the scaling process. So nature-based solutions like this Eco Valley example that I mentioned are very much packaged and then unpacked and then adopted in 20 more areas and then 100 more areas. So these solutions are not really tied to local ecosystems. I mean, look how the quality of the soil and how polluted it was before the eco-city transformation happened. So these different elements that also include nature-based solutions are kind of experimented with and then packaged and then moved to another location and deployed and scaled up and aggregated to desired size. So it's very much a kind of like a process of scaling that we see in China, and certainly something to learn from when we're talking about the need for scaling in European cities, for example. There are very clear political and policy foundations for this process, very clear visions, very clear strategies that these initiatives are going to fit into. This could also be a danger. What happens if the regional political forces change, and maybe somebody is less in favor of nature-based solutions and more in favor of other kind of urban development. But when there is a clear vision, we have seen quite fruitful projects to emerge. On the other hand, planning process is very much reliant on top-down and very limited space for adjustments based on the needs of stakeholders. So it's important to emphasize that it's a different governance context. On the other hand, public-private partnerships are gaining an interest, as we have seen. There is a lot of involvement of private capital to relieve the government of financial burdens, ensure that commercial viability is there and replication can happen. For example, the eco-city is aimed to be completely financially sustainable with all the expenses, including the added costs of the nature-based solutions and the sponge city and the green infrastructure elements. They want to cover this from real estate sales and they also calculate how it improves the value of real estate and what is the contribution of nature to the total economic value of the project. Yes, maybe just two more points. One of them is that what I've seen, especially working in Singapore, is that it is time to get away from the idea that nature, green infrastructure, blue infrastructure is just decoration, it's just fluff, it's something we do after we did the hard infrastructure planning. We have to think of it as hard performance infrastructure as well, that does so many things for us. And we have to plan and design it as just like we do with all our infrastructures. We have to think of it as a system within the city. And I think there are many good examples of this happening across the globe, but Singapore is certainly a leading actor, and there's a lot to learn there from this approach. This kind of solutions transfer is interesting to look at because I think that the Eco Valley is a good example of sort of contemporary urbanism in the global south, which is happening without much imitation from Western urban planning methods and practices. A lot of key elements are basically rebranded solutions and practices from Singapore, such as this EcoCell concept. The Eco Valley is based on Singapore's Park Connector concept. And these particular solutions are very scaled. The most advanced eco-city in China, they have this sort of vision to be practicable, replicable, scalable. It kind of signals the interest that it's going to be used for future cities across Asia. And we need to think of the implications of this, intention, and what do we really want to scale, what works and what doesn't work. The justice aspects are certainly interesting, who gets access to such high quality living conditions, and which social groups are being basically subsidized here by private and public investment. And I don't want to dwell on it so much. On the other hand, we have published a paper on this just a couple of weeks ago. So if you're interested, feel free to read up on it. We have looked into the justice aspects of hybrid governance, public-private partnerships globally. And maybe could be an interesting reading for many of you before the next webinar series, where I think the topic is going to be governance. So thank you very much for the attention. And I suppose I pass the ball back to our facilitators.
Yes, thank you very much, Attila, for your presentation. It has been very interesting. The case is very interesting for us. It's a very different case from others that we may know. So that is the main contribution in this webinar. Well, we have finished with the presentations. So we are going to the groups to discuss, but I will have to change some of the plans. We were expecting to discuss for some minutes in the groups, and then we were going to see the conclusions of each one of the groups in the main room again. But we are going to avoid this part, and after the discussion, we are going back to the main room and close the webinar for today. And we are presenting the conclusion next week with the next discussion on governance, planning, and design. That's because we have run out of time. But well, you are going to be redirected to the different rooms according to your language. And I have to thank the moderators for being here and for leading these groups. I have to thank Begoña Arellano Jaimerena, Nahuel Becandávila, Andrea Bear, Inge Bobbing, Mariela Corbellini, Daniel D'Alessandro, Fabián de la Fuente, Frances Hugmayer, Tanea Kuznikov, Marta Mirás, Adrián Puentes, Diego Rusticucci, Diego Sepúlveda Carmona, Raquel Hadrich, Liang Xiong, and Yuting Tai. Now you are going to find an invitation to go to your room so you can join, and then I will ask you to please put your name, the name under you subscribed to the webinar so we can identify you. Thank you.